Hey everybody, it's Ross from LPICprep.com. Kind of a different format and venue today, but I think you'll find it to be okay. This is the Certifiable series where I help you get ready for the LPIC1 exams, get in the right mental state, how to study and experiment effectively, and use your time most wisely in order to get your LPI Level 1 exams. So today, we've got kind of a conundrum to talk about. You know, LPI is vendor and distribution neutral, which means that they don't focus on a particular distribution, you know, Red Hat, OpenSUSE, whatever it happens to be, Debian, and they don't go after a particular vendor, which would be Red Hat, Novell, Ubuntu, you know, Debian, whatever it happens to be. They talk to you about Linux, you get certified on Linux, you do all your studying about Linux, but you have to study on something and with something. So you have to choose a distribution. Let's talk about, first of all, what a distribution is. Distribution is a collection of software packages. Software packages are made up of the different files, binaries, directories, scripts, you know, symlinks, whatever it happens to be, that make up a particular package. Let's say, for example, the VIM editor will have its main package. It might have a couple of supplementary packages that go along with it, and these would be installed in the correct order on your distribution in order to be able to run VIM, the editor. So those packages make up a distribution, and that distribution is the big collection of packages along with administration tools, a desktop choice, some server software choices, maybe some sales, some support, and some other things go along with that. So that's the concept of a distribution. Remember what packaging is, and that we have two different types of packages. We have Red Hat packages, Red Hat Package Manager, the RPM command, and all of the things that go along with that. And the Debian package managing, which is the DPKG and apt-get and a few other things, a few other tools for dealing with that. But it's those two packaging styles that we have to be concerned about, because LPI does test you in the Level 1 101 exam on both the Debian and the Red Hat packaging formats. Now, right now in the market, I would say, especially in the server market, you're going to see that the Red Hat Package Manager distributions are probably a fairly clear winner in that regard, or more prevalent. But on the desktop, where we see a great deal of Ubuntu, you'll see the Debian packaging format is very much a clear winner in that regard. So let's talk about what we have to do in order to study, and what we have to do in order to be able to choose a distribution, and why it's important that you choose both formats and you study both formats. I mean, other than, you know, passing the exam, it is important in the corporate world to make sure that you don't sock yourself just into, or limit yourself into, one distribution. You need to know the Red Hat Package Manager and the Debian package managing schemes in order to pass the exam. But who knows, if you're going to work in an organization that has one or both, or you move from one organization to another and suddenly you change distributions, you need to know both of these types of formats. So which actual distribution should you pick and decide to learn with? Well, you pick these like you would pick a major and a minor in school. You pick, you know, you're in college or university, you decide you want to be, you know, a medical student, or you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a, you know, a system administrator, whatever that is. You pick that major, and then you'll also do additional study in order to make sure that you're well-rounded. Well, just like we have to, you know, to pick a major and a minor, you do need to pick at least a distribution in order to be able to start studying. Now, which one you're going to pick, we already kind of talked about why it's important that you have both of those styles. But whatever one that you're going to pick, you should pick that one based upon what you think your market is going to be. And also, there's some individual preferences that are kind of important here. If you happen to like the Debian Package Manager format and the way Ubuntu does it, you probably should have that as your major. If you happen to like the way Red Hat or Novell SUSE does with their Red Hat Package Manager and the RPM style, then you probably should focus on that and pick up as much of the other as you need. Now, if you already have a Linux distribution, or you've been experimenting with Linux and you know a little bit about it, you probably ought to stick with that distribution as your major. If you're not using a Linux distribution already, and you haven't made any choices about that, you really have kind of a wide open field. And let's give you a little help and advice about what to do with that. The tough part about trying to learn Linux is trying to learn Linux itself and not get lost in all the package formats and all the different tools and utilities that one distribution uses and the other one doesn't have anywhere in sight. Okay, so what we want to try to do is get you to the point where you're able to do what you need to do and learn what you have to learn in order to get your certification, but not have it be such a big deal, you know, where you're wiping out the family photo albums and, you know, QuickBooks taxes and stuff like that. You need to be able to experiment safely. So this is going to require you to have your own machine that's dedicated to your studying, to use VMware or Parallels, or perhaps to use one of the Linux Live CD distros. When you use a live CD distro, what you really need to do is go get the ISO file, which is, you can look up an ISO file, but it's basically a binary representation of a CD or a DVD. Once you get that, you can burn that to your CD or your DVD, boot up your system, and it will run completely out of RAM and on the processor and not touch the hard disk at all. So this keeps you from, you know, making these terrible mistakes, or if you do make those terrible mistakes, it's easy to get rid of them afterwards. So remember that a live CD distro is not going to modify any portion of your machine. It is strictly going to run in memory and on the CPU and not touch your disk. That doesn't mean that you can at some point turn a live CD distribution into an installed version on a hard drive of Linux. You can definitely do that, but you should leave that until you're a lot more comfortable and that you have a machine that you can do that with. The world of Linux distributions, and especially live CD distributions, is just a dazzling array. You know, you could try one of these distributions once a day and still not run out, you know, by the time you got into a year. So rather than turn you loose into what I like to call the distribution version of Costco or Sam's Club, for you to wander around and try to figure out what you want and maybe get the wrong thing or too many or go down the wrong track, I want to have you initially try to experiment around with a few really solid, very well known, and I would say experience-based distributions that I'm going to recommend to you. So the first one I want to recommend is Knoppix. This is the granddaddy, the grandmaster of all live Linux distributions. It's designed by Klaus Knopper and an engineer of the highest caliber, and it comes in both a 700 meg and a 4.2, or I think it may be a 4.7 gig version, DVD version. I'll make sure that you have the links on the screen, like this one, in order to be able to go get it. The next one, and by the way, I've run Knoppix for a very long time. I'm very comfortable with it. It does almost everything I would want it to do, and have run it as a hard drive install for a very long time also. So the next one is DSL, Damn Small Linux, which I think wins an award just for the name alone, and it's amusing. But DSL is a distribution that fits on one of those little tiny credit card sized CDs, the little 50 or 150 meg CDs, and you can put it in your wallet, you can boot your system up with it, you know, you can do all kinds of fun things with DSL. I used to use it for installations in the lab, and I recommend it as a possible option simply because it's so portable and so easy to deal with. Last, of course not least, is Ubuntu. The live CD distribution of Ubuntu is also the installable edition, and it is probably the most, I would say, popular and or most likely to be encountered version of Linux on the desktop of the Debian packaging format. Now, for those who just can't stand it and really want to go in and get as many different distributions as possible and try them out, I'm going to give you a few links that I really like and have come to appreciate, and I think will give you more than enough information about the world of live CD distributions. The first one is Wikipedia's list of live CDs, and it's probably the most comprehensive list of live CDs, not strictly for Linux, but for Mac OS X, for you know, Windows, OS 2, DOS, you name it. There's just a huge amount of live CD distributions that are mentioned on this particular page. So go there, have a good time, do some research, and get yourself the right distribution for you. Next, of course, is what I like to say is the world's largest shopping mall of Linux distributions, DistroWatch. I really appreciate DistroWatch's and the folks who run its ability to give me as much information as I need about a particular distribution. They've got reviews, they've got, you know, a little bit of specifications there. You can always get the link to download the distribution. Just a great site. Go subscribe to their RSS feed and see all the great stuff that's happening on a day-to-day basis. And then last but not least is Debian Help, which is kind of a DistroWatch type of thing for all the Debian distributions. This is a wonderful site. It has a lot of good how-tos and you know, information about the different distributions and what they do and what's included in them. So if you're on the Debian side and you're adding that to your mix, highly recommend it. So in summary, folks, what I really wanted to say with all this was that If you are not already a Linux user, you don't have a distribution picked, hopefully we got you some really good tips and tricks here and some places to go in order to get that. You know that you need to have both the Red Hat Package Manager and the Debian packaging format in order to get your exams properly done. And for those of you who are already Linux users or have already picked a distribution, make sure that you give the other side equal time and make sure that you learn both of those package formats and both of those distribution types, because you never know what's going to happen out there in the world of corporate Linux. So thanks very much for joining me. Make sure you come and get subscribed on the site and visit lpicprep.com. Thank you.